So a very warm welcome, Anil and Usha. Thank you so much for taking out your time and joining this conversation for our campaign that we are running for World Cancer Day. And we have been following your organization's work and your work as well. And we have been really excited to connect with you and understand more about the issue, more about the challenges and more about the impact that your organization has been creating. So I am Pratham Kashyap. With me, I have my colleague Digdarshika Takuria, and we are from the marketing team of non-profit partnership side at Goodera. And so, first of all, I would just like to understand about you, about your organization, a basic overview.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Pratham and Digdarshika, for your time. And thank you very much for in terms of having, providing us this platform to speak about our work and our organization. So I represent an organization called St Jude India Childcare Centers. We are a Bombay-based organization, a non-profit, which provides a shelter to children undergoing cancer treatment. So just to give you some background, around 50,000-60,000 children get diagnosed with cancer every year in India. A bulk of those children are from areas where medical treatment is not easily accessible. So there are only few centers in India where treatment is available, especially for pediatric cancer. So these children and the families who are based out of, in small villages, small towns, they have to travel to big cities like Bombay or Delhi, Chennai, and so on, where hospitals are available which can treat this condition. Because the treatment is long duration, takes anywhere between 8 months to a year, the child and the families need to stay for an extended period of time in the city where the treatment is happening. And therefore, there's a gap there with regard to in terms of the hospital may take care of the treatment, but the hospital will not take care of the accommodation when the child is outside the hospital. So that's where St. Jude's comes in. So it's a gap that we had identified, our founder had identified around 15 years back. And we started small. We started in Bombay. And as we speak now, we have a capacity to support around 467 families across India. We operate in 9 cities. And the child and both the parents stay with us for the duration of treatment.
Great. I think this is really amazing thing that you're doing, and this particular gap that you're bridging, I think this is, like you said, this is very, very niche, but very, very needed, much needed gap that you're bridging right here. And so I would like to, the very first question that I would like to ask under this interview conversation that we're having would be the most basic one. Like, we are, the entire world is facing the disease called cancer for a long time now, but still there is a lot of gap in terms of awareness in our society, right? Due to which the disease has also been considered as a taboo in our society, and a lot other developed and developing nations as well. So I wanted to understand from you as well that why is it necessary to create awareness about this particular disease? What is so unique about this disease that people need to know about?
So what I'll do, Pratham, is I'll kind of speak about from examples that we face, the children who stay with us face, and not touch upon the broader issue, but I can speak about from personal examples that we encounter, and you can extrapolate in terms of what happened. So just to give an example of what we do, and clearly the stigma that you mentioned. So in locations that we operate in Bombay, Delhi, so on, we obviously need a building, a premises for us to conduct our activities, which means we need to either rent out a house or rent out a commercial space, and to make it habitable so that these families can stay. And I'm sorry to say that in most cities, we find a lot of pushback from neighbors, even when donors are willing to kind of give us space for free to do our work. There have been neighbors and so who feel that they don't want to share a neighborhood with us. And in fact, in locations like Hyderabad, we have had a neighbor take us to court. Luckily, the court stood with us, but we know that there are a lot of such in terms of cases where in fact in Delhi, just to give you an example, in Delhi where we support families, children being treated in AIIMS, we are not able to get a space anywhere in Delhi to in terms of provide the shelter, and our centers are actually located in Noida. So children need to travel at least an hour every day, whenever they need to travel to get treatment. So that's the kind of stigma that we face in cities. In addition, in terms of speaking about stigma, the families face back home. We have heard cases where, because of the lack of awareness, obviously, when the child goes back home after treatment, we have heard of cases where they are ostracized and not allowed in the village. And there have been issues where children have find it difficult to continue education. So, all this is obviously related to lack of awareness, because as we know, cancer is not contagious. But we have not taken the effort to kind of spread awareness about the disease and how it can be treated. So those are some in terms of from a social angle that I want to speak about. In addition, there's also with regard to access to treatment, there is stigma and lack of awareness even among the people who are in terms of let's say the parents of the cancer patient or relatives of the cancer patient. And we find that there's a lot of reluctance in terms of taking up the cancer treatment, allopathic treatment, so to say. And very often we find cases where the parents often seek support from the local quacks or other ailments before they actually, and valuable time is lost. By the time they come to a location like Bombay, Delhi, valuable time is lost. Lastly, one very, very serious issue which obviously permeates all other issues in India is that there's a gender disparity as well when it comes to treatment of cancer. Even in our centers we see, and we often hear from the hospitals as well, very often parents choose not to pursue treatment for their girl children. So we can see that even among the children who stay with us, the boys are a significant majority than girls. So those are some stigma that we are aware of. Obviously, in addition, if you were to extrapolate what you say, we can extend it further to cancer among adults as well. But right now, I'm just speaking about the kind of stigma that we have seen among the people that we work with.
I think this is perfectly fine, Anil, because something coming from your experience would be far more effective and far more influential. And at the same time, I'm sad, but I'm even more overwhelmed with whatever you have shared. And like there is a gender disparity as well even in these kind of issues as well. So there are a lot of such myths, a lot of such misconceptions prevailing around in our society, a lot of prejudices, like you said, the gender disparity and people thinking that cancer is a contagious disease. There would be a lot of other myths and misconceptions as well. So I would like you to touch upon few of them and take this platform to aware all those people who will be watching this and bust those myths, bust those misconceptions out in front of them.
So the biggest myth really is about people believing that cancer is a death sentence. That is definitely not true at all now. Could have been true a couple of decades back, 30-40 years back, but now it's just not true, especially for children. In fact, globally, the recovery rate, survival rate for children with cancer is close to 80-85%. And in India itself, we believe it's close to 70-75%. So there's a very, very high likelihood that the child, even once diagnosed with cancer, can have a full life. So that's one big myth. And this is very important to put out there to kind of communicate to the parents that they should not give up. When at any stage that they're diagnosed, they should definitely take the effort. And unlike earlier, especially with children from underprivileged families, there is no dearth of financial support, especially in hospitals like Tata Memorial, Bombay, AIIMS in Delhi. And there are enough government schemes, other support available for in terms of treatment of cancer, especially for children. So that's one big myth that in terms of I would like to use this platform to share. The others that we just spoke about, it is not contagious at all. And the other thing which people are not aware of is that there are a lot of organizations like St Jude's who are out there to support families in this effort. We know it's a very, very challenging time. There are a lot of in terms of obstacles in the way. There are hospitals and well-meaning doctors who will make sure that the child is treated, but there are other NGOs like St Jude's, the other organizations. You may have heard of Cuddles, which help with nutrition. There are organizations like Can Kids, which help with financial support. So and host of other foundations who are willing to walk together, help work with the parents to make sure the child is treated. So I think that awareness is also important for people to know that they don't need to fight this battle alone.
I think that's a very valid point that you've made. And recently we got in touch with one other organization that deals with this particular challenge, Nargis Dutt Foundation. We got in touch with Ms. Priya Dutt, and she also said the same thing, that we are here to support all those people, just that people are not aware about us. And that is why we want these kind of push from organizations like Goodera to tell those people about our existence, and tell those people that actually we exist, and they can seek help from such organizations. And I think that's a very, very valid point, apart from all those myths and misconceptions around the particular disease, I would say. Also, I would here like to understand from you the difference between this particular challenge in developing nations and developed nations. Is it something? Is the scenario different in the developed nations compared to the developing nations, or what? If there is a difference, then what is the basic reason behind that difference?
So what we understand now, Pratham, is that from a treatment standpoint, India is really improved significantly. And I believe this is what we hear. I mean, I don't have first-hand experience. Is that the quality of doctors, the quality of drugs available is comparable. And we have come a long way in the last couple of decades. What's a big challenge is diagnosis. So, I mean, that's true not just for cancer. We are very weak in primary healthcare. We do quite well in tertiary healthcare. This is actually true for education as well. We are weak in the primary stages. So one key thing with regard to cancer is how early you catch it. So if the diagnosis happens in time, there's a good chance that the patient can recover. But what happens is, in India, for example, obviously cancer requires blood work and so on, other diagnostics to be run. People don't have access to it. So in the cities, of course, we are all lucky, we know where to go and get those tests done. So that's a big challenge with regard to, in terms of, and this is very true. I mean, you could also look at how it manifested itself. I mean, we were not even aware of the information what is happening in the interiors in India, whereas with developed countries, you could know what is exactly in terms of number of tests, number of positive cases, so on. So the same is true, I would say, in a manner of speaking. In developing countries, lack of diagnosis, lack of labs at the primary healthcare level actually directly impacts the survival rate of the children. That would be one thing that readily comes to mind. And I suppose at the highest end, obviously there is still. Usha may have more information, but I would say that at the top hospitals like at Roland Steering, so we may not have comparable skill sets here, but that's an exception. But by and large, what we believe is that the quality of drugs, quality of doctors available here are as good as any now. I'm speaking of India, of course, not the broader developing countries.
I think that's a great news.
Having said that, based on our own experience, we know that India actually caters to a lot of the subcontinent also. Even at our centers, we have children who are undergoing treatment from Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan. So we have patients from these countries who stay at St Jude centers and get treated in the hospitals that we work.
That's actually very, very great, because this way we are like disrupting the borders and going beyond geographies and borders. So thank you so much for that. And here I would also like to understand that, is it like we have recently seen the growing trend in the cases of cancers, be it pediatric cancer or be it the cancers in adults. So is it something that we have brought upon us, our lifestyle, our changing world and way of looking at life and dealing with things in our day-to-day life?
So unfortunately, I'm not the best person to comment on that. What we know is that, what we have been told is that more and more people are seeking treatment now. So which is why the numbers reflect the fact that more and more people are seeking treatment. So that is a fact. But beyond that, and to be able to answer your question, in all honesty, I don't think I'll be able to give a clear answer. But we know that definitely people are seeking treatment. That's also because the government itself is extending medical services to closer to where the people are by expanding the network of hospitals. So we know that more and more people are seeking treatment.
That's a great point of view to actually consider, because what you have just told, that we have interacted with quite a few non-profits and they haven't touched upon this aspect, that actually now it is the case that we are getting to know about those cases being detected, and we did not know that earlier if people were having cancer or not,
and taking a treatment. Pratham, see, the thing is, there's a lot of people are intimidated to come to cities like Bombay.
yes.
You imagine we see a lot of families from Northeast, for example, Jharkhand. I mean, it's not easy decision for them to leave their grandparents and siblings and come to Bombay or Chennai, but people are doing that now. Earlier, I mean, so even if they knew it was cancer, they would have not had the confidence or the strength to go through the treatment process. So even that is happening now. And we know that the hospitals now do have funds. I mean, in our 15 years of existence, we have seen a big difference in terms of the resources available to the hospitals, in terms of being able to support these families, in terms of for drugs and other transplants and so on, which was not the case 10-15 years back.
I think that's a very positive angle that we are looking at of this particular issue.
No, so I would just, and given the context in which we are speaking, so this is partly made possible by a greater awareness among donors, really, whether it is individuals or companies and so on. See, donors are willing to support a cause when you know that there is a strong partner who are able to deliver. So the good thing about hospitals like Tata Memorial, whom we work closely with, the donors have confidence that they'll do a great job and that the money is being used in the right manner. So one of the reasons we believe that even include organizations like Nargisa's foundation, they have been able to support more and more families because organizations like Tata Memorial have gained the trust of the decades of great work they have done, which is how in terms of given the platform. I mean, it's important for donors to get the confidence that their money is being used for the right purpose and it's making difference in people's lives.
Definitely, that's so true. And I would here like to diverge a little from the topic and discuss about the role of the society in this particular issue. Sure. Because like we discussed earlier as well, along with this physical disease, there comes a mental burden on the person, on the family of the person. So I would like to understand about the role of the society, role of the people that we are, because if this disease has been created and looked upon like a taboo that has been created by the society, that's a social point of view to look at it, and it's the people who have created the stigma around it. So from you, I would like to understand the overall role of the society and how it can get better if the society will deal with this issue in much better way as compared to doing
sure.
it.
See, all I can say is that society is not a monolith. You know what I'm saying? So, in fact, what my own experience in terms of having worked in non-profits as well as specifically St Jude is that I am overwhelmed by the support that society provides to strangers. Essentially, in cities like Bombay, of course, there are some patients from Bombay also who undergo treatment at TMH, but majority of the patients are outsiders. And all these outsiders are actually supported by locals, whether it is organized in St Jude or even ordinary locals, like the restaurant owner, like the auto wala. So society actually, they do a great job. See, of course, there are cases like I mentioned where a neighbor does not give us some space to run our our center. But there is a larger society out there who's really willing to, and all the support that we get with regard to not just financial support, but all the in-kind support that we get at our centers in terms of people willing to donate clothes, slippers, toys, books, time. A lot of volunteers at St Jude. St Jude is built on a foundation of volunteers. It's only now that people like me have come and help the journey in terms of scaling. So it's essentially society. All these volunteers are essentially parts of society who have actually, in terms of the cancer treatment has flourished because of, I would say, many of these the society that you speak of. Having said that, I mean, what we can speak from experience, a lot of the pushback or stigma stems from fear. That's because, I mean, unlike AIDS, I mean, you may recall on 10-15 years back, AIDS was a big scare. But there are a lot of moral angles around, in terms of people with AIDS. But in cancer, it's primarily driven by fear. People being afraid of, the disease and the sadness associated with it. So, what I would say, Pratham, is that things are definitely changing. And even though there are still issues with regard to people being ostracized or people not being supportive, a lot of it is triggered by fear. But I would say that at least in my time here, I've seen that societies really come together in terms of being able to support in whatever manner. It could be in terms of in-kind support, time, counseling, volunteering to teach the children, because these children lose their 1 year of education, at least 1 year education they lose. So we have a lot of volunteers, people, even young children from schools, who come and try and help these children in terms of being in touch with their school studies and so on. So I have a slightly different view. I agree with you that there is a segment of society which probably needs to be more aware, be open and so on. But I would say, by and large, I would say the larger segment of society is far more supportive, willing to do what it can to in terms of help these patients in need.
Thank you so much, Anil. And I think you have raised a very, very interesting and valid point here, talking about the donors and the volunteers. And trust me, like 100% of the non-profit organizations whom we have connected with unanimously say that when it comes to the biggest stakeholder in a non-profit organization, it is volunteers, period. True. Because a CEO, a founder, or the beneficiary cannot take a non-profit organization to another level, and they cannot scale that. And it has to be the volunteers, the people with the right intent at their heart to come up for the cause and support it, and support the people around them who are suffering with that particular issue, and then make some collective efforts. Those collective efforts matter a lot. So I would like to understand from you as well, like, you have thrown a bit of light on how you interact and how your volunteers interact with your organizations, but I would like to discuss this in a more elaborative way and try to understand from you that what are the multiple ways or multiple avenues by which, let's say, a person like me who's sitting in a completely different geography now, that a virtual experience and virtual connection has become comparatively easier as compared to like a couple of years back. So now, if a person like me who wants to support this particular cause, how can they come up and support the cause, maybe virtually or in any other way?
So Pradhan, what I'll do, I'll just spend a couple of minutes in terms of St Jude's journey, in terms of what role volunteers played for the last 15 years, and in terms of, in today's context, what is the role that volunteers are helping us with. So when the organization was set up 15 years back, it was set up by Mr. Nihal Kaviratne, who just retired from Unilever after 40 years of Unilever, and he wanted to do something for children. And he came across in terms of patients outside the Tata Memorial Hospital, and on inquiry he found that there's a big gap here with regard to in terms of between treatment and so on, and which is how he started small. So before he started, what he did is he put together a team of volunteers from among his family and friends circle. And what he asked them for is time. And he said that all of you, he would like, he asked them to lead a particular function. So he asked them to lead fundraising. Somebody said you lead accounts and finance. Somebody leads legal. Somebody leads all the premises and upkeep. And what he asked for time, which is, as you know, the most valuable commodity. It cannot be replaced. So he asked them to give that time, and they're all professionals in their own right. They're obviously good at finance. There'll be some CAs good at finance. Somebody else is good in legal. So they were able to bring in their skills, which NGO could not have afforded, of people of that aptitude. And he asked them to give their time. And luckily, all of them are still part of the St Jude family. Many of them are board members. And over the last 15 years, these are the volunteers who actually built the organization. in those and build those functions. So I think the initial, I mean, unlike if you were to draw a parallel to a startup in terms of which is the fad now. So when you have these high valuations for startups, it is on that skill of that person or the passion of that person who's leading the startup, the promise of what the startup can be. So it was very similar in our case. It was the skill of people who came together when the organization came in, because we were not impacted. We were impacting only 8 families when we started off. It was only 8 families, but because of the skills that they brought in, the building blocks that they put together, we are now able to support. I think we support around 2,000-3,000 families every year. So that's the role that volunteers played, and I think the why it's key is, especially for non-profits, unlike startups, we will not be able to afford that kind of skills in the early days. You can't just afford, because obviously we're trying out a new thing. We have donations, so we'll not be able to afford that kind of skills in the initial days. So that's why it's very crucial to get volunteers involved and give them a specific piece of problem to solve, instead of, because I worked in several non-profits in the past as well. So it's important to give clarity to the volunteers and play to their strengths, to figure out what is it that they're good at, instead of tasking them with whatever is available. So that's the key thing. With regard to today's world, Pratham, really, especially due to the pandemic, where we have moved significantly to online modes, there's a huge role that volunteers can play with regard to giving time to interact with the beneficiaries. Now, this is true for cancer, but could be for other organizations working in other areas as well. Because of the huge gap between, in terms of people with privilege, people like us who have access to good hospitals, good schools, good colleges, and so on. There's a huge segment of population, as you know, who are deprived of that kind of guidance and support, whether it is in education, whether it is in the career counseling, whether it is in the life skills. And you mentioned the emotional support that is required for people under distress. So there's a huge role that volunteers can play. So that is something that we are tapping now. So through our network, through the employees of our volunteers, of our donors. So we see a lot of engagement from the employees of all our CSR donors, who are willing to give their time and have sessions, for example, at our centers on financial literacy, because that's a big area that, as you know, even people like us are not fully literate. So do courses on financial literacy for the parents who stay at our centers. Speak about skilling, basic maths, basic computer skills. All these things can be done through online platforms, and all these skills are something that our normal schools, do not actually do a great job of imparting. Then there's a lot of work that we do on recreation, on art, painting, and we've seen our beneficiaries derive great joy by being part of these activities. It could be dance. So those are definite areas that volunteers can engage in, and they do, and we see a lot of volunteers do that. So those are what readily come to mind. We have volunteers who do yoga, who do sports sessions for them. People are passionate about sports. They could do some sessions on sports, chess, music. All these are activities that we do at our centers. Storytelling. People are passionate about storytelling. And you'll find it's not just the parents, kids. Even the parents enjoy these storytelling sessions.